Hey everyone, welcome along. Great to have your company. V8 Sleuth Podcast, powered by Parramatta Toyota for another week. Sydney's Toyota dealer with a passion for performance and motorsport. It's time this week for a Q&A. Every now and then we put the call out. We did it on Facebook this week, Mark Walker. We put out the call and we get all sorts of questions. There is never a dull Facebook post here in Sleuth HQ.
Happy podcast to you, Noons. I tell you what, it's a good insight into whatever it is our listeners have going on in their brain. There's a lot of questions, a lot of people late at night firing into the Facebook with some really good ones.
Yeah, there is a wide and varied bunch. On this episode, we've got a bit of everything. We've got Bahrain television of supercars. We've got rules around race numbers. We've got pit stop ins and outs. We've got Gen 3 cars. We've got great race grids. We've got NASCAR to cover off. We've got scandals to deal with as well. You can pick which one you would prefer. And championship rings also gets a little bit of a mention here, which we'll get onto a little bit later. Shall we start from the Noonan end bowling to the Walker end?
Oh, here we go.
You got your bat? You ready?
Yeah, sure.
So question number one is from Matt White. Now, not Channel 7's own, not racing driver / team owner. Another Matt White, who is a regular Facebook follower here for V8 Sleuth. His question is, and this is completely ironically hilarious, how did it come to be that David Addison, the British commentator, came to call the V8 supercar races in Bahrain in 2007 or 8? He wasn't quite sure. I'm pretty sure it was 2008. Is this just irony like you wouldn't believe on a podcast where the guy that asked the question is called Matt White and the guy that David Addison replaced for the weekend was Matt White? Surely that's a thing.
Look, if you're going to run a fake name on Facebook, you'd surely just pick something completely different to your actual name, wouldn't you? Really?
You would have thought something else might pop up, but not the case. But it's really going back into the vault here because David Addison is the voice, Mark, of the British Touring Car Championship on ITV over there. He's been doing it for, more than a decade now. He's very much the voice of the BTCC in the modern era. But yeah, he did call a V8 supercar round, and I remember him doing it. I saw him all of a month ago in the UK, but I'd completely forgotten the circumstances behind it. But it was because Matt White had started another gig that was probably deemed by the network a bit more important than a V8 supercar round in the Middle East, I suppose.
Did David also do some circuit commentary at Bathurst 1000?
Yeah, that's what led to it. That's what started
Right.
it. He came out, I think, for Bathurst that year in 2008. He'd done the 24-hour races for television for Procar in the early part of the decade. And then a bit of arm twisting went on, may or may not have assisted a little, to get him to Bathurst for the V8s. Obviously, the 24-hour was great, but the V8s was the October race is the Bathurst race that people by and large know. And I'm pretty sure that Tony Cochrane was a big part of the push when there was a hole open up when Matty couldn't do a round. And of course, don't forget, to fly someone from the UK to the Middle East versus Australia to the Middle East is not much of a difference, I suppose. It's probably a shorter trip from there to there. But hence why there was that round where Adders called alongside Neil Crompton and Mark Beretta became the host for the weekend. But do you remember why Matty White wasn't there? Because I had to really dig for this.
No idea, but it would have been a delayed coverage as well, sort of thing. It wouldn't have been a live same day thing. It would have been a next day.
No. It was
coverage
live
from
that
Bahrain?
night. No. It
Really?
wasn't live. It was as live. It was on
Yeah, right.
of an evening, very late evening into the early hours, but it was palatable. It wasn't like a 5 a.m., 4 a.m.
No.
wake up or anything. It was okay.
What's wrong
I
with
didn't.
that?
Well, no, that's what you do every other day. That's standard walk and get up time. But I do remember going to a pub in Melbourne to watch it with some industry colleagues at the time. I think Grant Rowley might have been involved in that, and maybe Andrew Van Leeuwen as well. But the silly thing was, it was on free to air. We could have sat at home and watched it, but we decided to just go to a pub and drink beers at the bar when we could have just sat at someone's house and watched it and drunk beers without needing a bar. Anyway, the reason why Matty White wasn't there, and I'd forgotten all about this, he became the host of Today Tonight just after Bathurst. And I actually when this question popped up the other day, I thought I must message him, but he messaged me about something completely different to this. And I said, "Hey, what was the story with you missing Bahrain?" And he said, "Yeah, he started tonight on the Monday night after Bathurst that year in October '08." And he said to me that he sort of had to wheel and deal with David Leckie to get the helicopter out on the Sunday night rather than do the drive back to Sydney. Um, so, yeah, and then obviously tonight, he can't do tonight if he's on a plane heading to Bahrain, and he's got to get back from Bahrain. And I think there was also Spring Racing Carnival that Channel 7 had the rights to at the time. So hence why there was a spot, and Adders filled it for that one-off weekend. So, yeah, that's the story behind how the voice of the British Touring Car Championship, who I can't remember at the time. I don't think he was calling British touring cars at that stage. I think that came a little bit later on down the line. So, Matt White, and Matt White all involved in that one.
Well, we thank all our listeners named Matt White, which brings us on to our second question. Brett Batterby. Hi, Brett. Do you think if during the pit stop stage of the Supercars races, they should do the combined in and the out lap total time? It would give the viewers a better idea of how hard they pushed before and after the pit stop. Thoughts?
I'd be on board with that. I think that's a good graphic to pop up on the screen to illustrate perhaps why an overtake has occurred of the car coming back out of the pits, or maybe the other way around. That would help illustrate it in a way that I reckon sometimes that information, I don't know about you, tell me what you reckon, but as a viewer of sport and motor racing in particular, sometimes information's better conveyed as a graphic for you to consume rather than if someone says all these numbers as audio, it's a bit harder to grasp.
No, no. I,
You
I
want
think
audio?
the I think no, I think the coverage at the moment, they're focusing on what's happening on screen a bit more. It's not so much bogged down in all this what could happen and what will
True.
happen and that
Absolutely
side of
agree.
things. It's sort of changed a bit that way.
Yep.
I think with all the different overcut and undercutty things, it's not necessarily the same lap on lap sort of situation. We're not really comparing apples and oranges. If there's, if it's a one lap difference, that's probably closer to the ballpark. But I think it'd be more useful to have the pit stop time, to have some sort of, Formula One obviously has a lot of technology and they are able to have the sensors embedded in each of the pit stalls to be able to tell you a pit stop time. We've had Larko in the past counting, which probably wasn't
Yeah,
optimal.
not very tech, not high tech. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi,
Yeah,
3
I don't
Mississippi.
know. It's interesting. I think it's probably a place, for Larko in the Hino hub to
To
break that sort of
analyze it,
stuff down.
yeah, probably analyze it after the fact or in the little bits after it where you can add a bit more detail to it.
We can sort of take a deep dive into, more than one little instance sort of thing. If
Yep,
there's a trend developing over time,
yep.
driver A is absolutely red hot at in laps, then that's something we can talk about.
Yeah, I think Brett's got a point, and it would work in certain situations where there's maybe a 1 lap difference and it's come down to someone doing a stonkingly good outlap on cold tyres, the pitted first to be able to then, get that margin so as they've covered themselves. But it's probably situational as to when it would work or wouldn't work or be of more value or of less value. John Harmon's going to take us right back in the vault here to Bathurst 1980. He's been watching that, so I guess he's just getting in the mood for the big race in October. So he's going back through the old races. He was wondering why Allan Moffat got to run the number one on that yellow Federation Falcon because he's wondering what the period rules were because he wasn't the reigning Australian touring car champion, let alone the previous years, and he wasn't the defending Bathurst 1000 winner. So how is it that he was allowed to run number one when he wasn't any of those things that give you the honour of being number one?
We often saw that with Bathurst, that the guy who would win the touring car championship would change numbers for Bathurst. With
Mm,
I think it's Glenn Seaton
yep.
did it one year.
Craig Lowndes did it the year before in
Yep,
'96. Jimmy Richards with the BMW JPS 635.
yep.
Um, yeah, so they were because of course the championship finished. It was a sprint race championship finished before Bathurst. Bathurst wasn't part of it back then, so that made sense. But it actually took us back to an article on the website. You might not remember this, but from a few years back, that from the vault. So Peter Brock was um, he was had the right to run number one because he was the reigning touring car champ, having just won it in 1980. He was also the defending Bathurst winner. So he had all the right. But Allan Moffat, remember, that's the year Moffat drove at Sandown in the second HDT Commodore. No, I don't have a car for Bathurst. Oh, what do you know? He's got a car for Bathurst. He's got a Falcon. So in the end, Brock gave permission for Moffat to use number one because otherwise the lowest number available was number 13. And I don't know if you were a bit of a bad luck skeptic, but there's plenty of people who don't like the thought of number 13 on the side of their race car. So Peter put together a handwritten note, pinned it to the press room board at Bathurst on the Thursday and said, here's my note, basically to grant Allan permission to use number one. Please pass it on to Ivan Stibbard, who was from the ARDC at the time. I'm sure he's absolutely champing at the bit, waiting for this vital news, was what wrote on that note. So, yeah, that's how Moffat got to run number one, a bit longer than he otherwise would have in previous years.
Didn't really do it justice, though, do you, on race day?
Had about one good lap, 2 bad laps, and bang, thing was done and over. Well, one and done. He never raced that car before or after. So, car number matched number of times he raced it.
Righto, Chassis Sleuth. Warren Bishop with the question, how many Gen 3 cars / chassis have been built to date, and how many of these are still raceable / unraceable? Go.
Good question, Warren. So we're at last count, and this is not counting cars that haven't been completed, raced, tested, shaken down, turned from more than some bar work and chassis into finished race cars. The last count I've got's 52, with a few more to come that teams will be punching out a few more cars. There are a few parked up. There's a few retired as collector's pieces, namely the Erebus Championship winning Brodie Kostecki Coke Camaro. You remember that one from 2023. The Chico Bathurst winning car from the next year, that's been parked up as well. Tony Quinn's got the Shane Van Gisbergen and Richie Stanaway Camaro that won Bathurst in 23. He's not that one's not racing anymore. That's parked up and basically a collector piece, although it does get on the track occasionally in New Zealand. Brad Jones has kept some Camaros. They converted one to a Supra, but built some new Supras. So there's a few of those lying around. Look, I reckon, Warren, there's about 35 or so if you take out the ones that are in the hands of collectors that maybe are damaged, sitting around needing some love, spare cars that aren't really active at the moment. And then there's other ones like the car that Jamie Whincup ran at Goodwood, which is an ex-DJR chassis that Ford now own and use for all that promo stuff in America and the UK, and Will Brown drove it in Austria, and Scott Pye drove it, and according to socials, what I saw, he had a small scrape with a bollard or a wall of something at some point. But so there's a few of those cars that are not in the active running at the moment. So I reckon that's about the number that we'd be at. But look for a bit of an explosion in numbers in the next 12 odd months, because there'll be a want to have cars for Super 2 when they become eligible in 2028.
Is it going to be a drama, do you think?
Not enough cars?
Mm.
It could be. Definitely, there were people pushing for them to come in next year. I know Jamie Whincup was a big component. Brad Jones was big for it because, of course, they had inventory. They had cars. I get it. But there's not right now, if you said, righto, it's a magical world and we can just snap our fingers and next year go Super 2, it's not enough cars. There's just not enough cars that have been produced to flow on down the line. Maybe by the end of next year, there's enough. But then how many of those teams who aren't main Supercars teams in Super 2 do a full swap over? That's a big investment. They're going to have to pony up to do that. So, yeah, there needs to be plenty more produced. And clearly there will be quite a few in the upcoming 6 to 12 months, I would say.
Alex Fellberg, what year had the most cars start the Great Race and how many was it?
Which would you like first, Mark? Year or number?
Number.
What would you guess without looking at your notes?
Somewhere between 62 and 64.
You looked at your notes. 63 is the record for starting the Great Race. Obviously, there's plenty of years where there's been lots of cars that have tried to pre-qualify, qualify. They've been reserves. They've dropped out at the last minute, all sorts of stuff.
Well, 1980, there were 80 cars nominated. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
No, and quite often it was you look back through those old entry lists and you're number 12 reserve. So if 11 other dudes fall out on race morning and they get sick or some decide to go home or something happens, you might get a gig. But 63's happened three times: 1969, 1978, and the last Group C race in 1984. So it became very much a capped 55 car field for the track density later on in time. But yeah, 63, they go right around the corner, back up the bottom of Conrod Straight there to a pretty good degree to get to 63. But it's been beaten, obviously, by the 6 hour in more recent times. Hasn't quite hit that full limit of, was it 70 or 72? I think it's
72 grid boxes have been painted on the track there. So.
yeah. So we haven't quite nailed that at Easter, but we've come pretty close a couple of times. So, but yeah, Alex, that's the pub trivia question. Biggest grid and what years that it occurred in. I'll ask you one then, Mark. Cameron Pierce asks, given that NASCAR and Supercars share the same OEMs now, is it possible that we could see three NASCAR drivers in Adelaide at some point and three Supercars guys go over to a Cup road course race?
Sure. Do the NASCAR guys really want to come out here and do what Austin Cindric did last year? It was a very big commitment by him. He was over here for a fair time, did a fair bit of testing, did a lot of work getting up to speed, and he went out there and got hosed. And he's one of the best road course racers that they've got in the States. So who else is going to line up and want to do that to themselves?
I think that's the issue, isn't it? And it's at that point of the year, by the time that Adelaide comes around, so last weekend of November in the calendar, well, NASCAR's done and dusted by then. They're on a break. They're trying to get away from. They've been car racing for 36 weekends out of 38 or
38,
something.
yeah.
So that's a pretty hard ask. And then the commitment to come out for a week or two and do a test or two and all of the PR and media obligations that surround it. So obviously there's been discussion about Ty Gibbs in recent times and the possibility of him driving a Supra at Adelaide later in the year. There's clearly been use over in the States, and we've reported on it and seen it, of ex-Supercars. One of Terry Wyhoon's cars been over there with Richard Childress. So clearly they all want to get better at their road course game. But the big effort and energy to do that, to come to Adelaide at the end of the year, that someone's got to pay for, by the way, too, to put a program together and a car on the track, that's a pretty big project to get road course racing laps and miles. But I guess if you want to get really good at this, you got to do more of it. And if there's someone that's willing to put together the deal to make it all happen, there's probably some young Cup guys who, you know what, there's a race car going on, there's a trip to Australia. Why not? Why not come and do it? It's possible. But I actually would look at it the other way, that what does it really add to the event to have a NASCAR driver coming and doing it? Who does it put any more bums on seats? I mean, it's something else to talk about and write about. I love international drivers coming and having a crack in Australia at Supercars particularly, but from an event perspective, does it really add all that much?
I think there'd be more value in Adelaide's the sort of place that's absolutely splashing money on one and everything at the moment. Why not bring some NASCARs out for a demonstration race? They used to go over to Suzuka back in the day
Mm.
with a fleet of cars at the end of the year. Do that for Adelaide. Bring the actual cars and the whole shooting match over and do it properly. Have a NASCAR race there. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Even if it would be a smaller demo field, 12 cars, 15 cars, it'll still rumble the walls and make the right noise. And if there's enough scattered stars among it, that's still pretty cool for a demo.
And then you're going to have all those American eyeballs focusing on the event. I mean, did all of the North America really care about Austin Cindric being here? Probably not. Probably
not.
wouldn't move the
No.
needle that much. But if you
No.
actually had a field of cars out here, you look at Adelaide, they're putting on a rally special stage. They've got the Napa Speedway. They're going to have MotoGP next year. They don't care. They'll spend money to do these sort of things. Let's
Yep.
bring NASCAR out here. The other way, would if Supercars guys go over to the States? Of course they will. We've seen in the past so many of the Brody Kostecki, Will Brown go over there and sample these cars. Cam Waters. We ran a story recently on the V8 Sleuth side about Jordan Anderson. He runs one of the second-tier O'Reilly Series teams, and he's looking for a Supercars ringer to put in his car for some of the road courses next year. If the calendars line up, there's no reason why you wouldn't go over there and do it, and the teams, I think, would be open to doing it as well. We've seen, back in the day when Ambrose used to race over there, Owen Kelly would go over there and be a ring in.
Yeah.
He was great. He's
Yeah.
not necessarily an A-grade guy in Australia, but he was certainly able to do the job over there. So do it.
Do it. Hey, do it. Do it. What was that movie again that was in? Can't remember now.
No idea.
I think it was the remake of Starsky and Hutch. Anyway, Les Connell, he asked, why doesn't GM try to get Penrite Racing as the whole team, i.e. across to Ford? Sorry. His example is 888 to Ford. Move the whole team rather than just the driver. Well, they've got a contract, don't they? Grove Racing are locked in with Ford for multiple years now, so they're not going anywhere.
Yep, true. It's funny. You look at the three manufacturers. Toyota's the biggest manufacturer in Australia. Ford's number 3 in terms of vehicle sales. GM Special Vehicles, it's a niche thing these days. I don't know if they've really got the clout behind it like the old Holden heyday where they could...
Not even close. No way.
They've got 3 models of car. They've got a Corvette, they've got the Silverado, and they've got the Yukon. And the cheapest one of those is $140,000 a piece. It's a niche thing that they've got going on there. They're doing well. The Silverado sales have been really good lately, and you see more and more Corvettes on the road as you drive around. But I don't think they've got the clout to really do what they used to do.
Oh, not even close to what they used to do. But would you have concerns about the future of GM in supercars when you look at that monthly sales sheet of when all the manufacturers' car sales are reported? As you mentioned, they are so niche and so small now compared to all the other brands that justifying a racing program of sorts with whatever budget it's got to be hard to keep on getting through, even though North America's on board and GM's in motor racing in all sorts of parts of the world. But at what point does it become, well, where's the value in this for us?
I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the next gen Camaro, what happens there in North America, and that will no doubt filter down here, and that'll be something very interesting. They're not going to be selling Supras here anymore, so you ask questions about any of it, really. So it's an interesting place in the world.
But that's a different one because Toyota didn't get into it to race the Supra. The Supra is just the vehicle that they're using to race, whereby it's about brand, it's about selling Tundras and Land Cruisers and RAV4s and also protecting a bit of their market versus the incoming arrival of these EVs and the Chinese brands. So really, now that Holden's gone, they could kind of step into a bit of that heartland. Toyota's been in Australia for many years. They're actively involved in a lot of the Australian sporting properties that are top tier. It kind of makes, the fact that they're racing a Supra that you can't buy pretty irrelevant. It's a brand piece than a product, a specific model piece. But yeah, wait and watch, Les. But clearly, Penrite Racing, Grove Racing, going nowhere. It's working for them. I think they're hooked in with Ford for some form of a deal for the future. So, and really, if you were one of these Ford teams, what's going to seduce you to jump ship to go to GM, and what are GM going to have for you to do that anyway? So, hence
it'd have to be cash.
Yeah, and then they just don't have it. They clearly don't have it. So, which who does? I mean, cash is king, and if you don't have it, you can't really make too many changes. So even if they grab Matt Payne and put him in at Team 18, they don't become a juggernaut overnight just off the back of one driver. But anyway, there's a bit to play out there with the future. But it's not as so simple to go and But if you're a Ford team right now, you got 888 as your homologation team. There's various Ford teams running at the front, leading the championship points from DJR's up the front, Groves at the front, 888's at the front, Tickford having their days. So there's no real sort of need to, who else would you need to? Why would you jump ship, really?
Yep. Right. Next question, Anthony Koenig. Which is a bigger scandal for Supercars to deal with, Team Dynamics test or Will Brown restrictor? Spare me.
Well, they don't have to deal with the team dynamic test anymore. That's been dealt with. Is that the question? No.
I,
Spare me. Did you just say spare me? What do you
I,
mean spare me?
the Will Brown restrictor thing. It's an oversight by both sides, but that's not a massive.
It's not scandalous.
It's not
Team
scandalous.
dynamic was scandalous when there was. You remember this stuff at the time, and this is pre-social media and camera phones and all that stuff. But a race team transporter that's been whited over, a nondescript car at a rocket range at Woomera, a tip-off to an Avesco V8 Supercar, what they were called at the time, official who went and sussed it out. There were so many elements of that, and then the penalties that came with it and the various takes that were had on it from both sides. That was a scandal. The Will Brown restrictor thing's not a scandal. It's obviously an oversight. It's awkward. It's a stuff up, but one's a scandal and one's a stuff up is probably the best way to put it.
My question about the Will Brown thing is, how did he get so many decent results when he was with one arm tied behind his back? I mean, that's where the investigation should be.
Yeah, with an affected snorkel. The air wasn't pumping quite as much, was it? So, 1 mil. Yeah, crazy, isn't it? So, at least they figured it out. At least they got there with it rather than it going on. Because, geez, I can't imagine the brain frying that Will and Andrew Edwards and everybody involved has had to suddenly go, well, how does, like nothing would make sense no matter which way you pull it apart. And then suddenly, ta-da, now it makes a bit of sense. So we'll see what happens. Hey, I've got a question for you, Fine Sir. Lance Marr asks, do you think that the Supercars champion should get a championship ring?
I'm ambivalent. I'm sorry. No, it
Doesn't really float your boat.
doesn't-
It's very American, isn't it? You know, championship rings, NBA, all that sort of stuff.
In a former life, I worked on the driver management side of things, and so many of these main drivers, it's written into their contract that even though the teams get a team's trophy for winning the races, all the trophies for the drivers revert back to the team. So the drivers would have to wind up having to buy themselves a trophy. Oh, I won the race, or I won a surfboard, or whatever the
Get a
case may
replica
be.
built. Yeah.
They have to go and get a replica built, which has nothing to do with what they were presented on the podium. So what would happen with rings is, oh, here's your ring, mate. Here, give me that. You lose it straight away. So that'd be weird. You used to have weird situations back in the day where when the Gold Coast was a 2-driver race and the co-drivers go up there and win a surfboard, they got to keep their surfboard and the main driver had to hand their surfboard over to the team.
I'm presuming because when the teams did the contracts with the international co-drivers, they didn't think to write that into the deal anywhere.
Even beyond that, yeah, even in more contemporary times, yeah, the
Wow.
co-drivers got to keep their surfboards. So
I don't mind the concept, but clearly it's American. What I would rather see, here's another spin on it maybe. I don't think maybe it should be the championship team gets a ring because the driver gets the accolades and the trophy on the podium and the whatever else they get. But what about the pit crew? What about the engineer? What about the lead mechanic? What about the guys who've serviced that car in the lane and girls all year to get it to that point? I think it might be a nice thing to see them rewarded as a little keepsake of, because how many guys and girls have worked on championship winning teams, but we don't refer to them as 5-time championship winning engineer or mechanic or technician or whatever it might be. That's probably a way that they could be recognized for this.
So Supercars has a list of all the performance
Correct.
people on the teams. Would it be funny if they get to the final race in Adelaide and suddenly team owners are just putting themselves in as a car controller for the
They want the ring.
Oh, you can sit this one out,
They
buddy.
would do that? Yeah, they'd do that, you reckon? Yeah.
It'd be an interesting little test, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point. But I'm not against it, but I'm not beating down the door to say that it's absolutely a must. But if it should be, the crews that keep these cars going, who get it to the point of winning the championship, I think they should be recognised in some way, shape or form. So we just, I don't know, get a jeweler sponsor or something out there, honour the mission and get some rings done and make it happen. Make it happen.
Or onion rings, whatever. Yeah,
Oh, burger rings. What about burger
rings?
That'd be good. Edible trophies. Done.
Do you want to ask this last one?
Sure. You can have a crack at this. This is from Shane Gleason. Now, Shane regularly posts on our Facebook page along these lines. This most recent one, when we called out for questions, he said, "Why do you guys post so much about SVG and not about other drivers that made it overseas?" Like, and I'm reading how he's written this. Like, I mean, so many posts, like it's obvious. He makes a reserve grade series and you just post the crap out of it. I'm reading what you said. But another driver from SID, I don't know what that means, has a go and you post nothing like that. So why do we write about Shane Van Gisbergen, Mark?
Because people care. Why do we write
True.
any of the stories on our website? Because people care. If we wrote rubbish stories, no one would click on them. We waste our time. Like, we'd love to write about everyone and everything, doing every race series everywhere, but people don't care, do they?
Not as much as about Shane racing NASCAR. I mean,
No.
you only have to. We see the traffic figures, we see the engagement. There's a lot of interest in what he's doing over there, and whether when
And
he's in Cup or he's doing a one-off in O'Reilly or truck or whatever's going on. There's
and
a lot of interest.
it's even more so than Scott McLaughlin. Like, I'm surprised how little interest there is in Scott McLaughlin these days, relatively speaking, from a
It's
traffic
IndyCar.
perspective.
Yeah, and we would love to do more about more, as you said. There's only so many of us. We have a lot of other commitments in the business, and there's only so many hours in the day. So we kind of have to put the energy where the return is, where the interest is from the audience, and the numbers quite overwhelmingly would say Shane and NASCAR racing is of real interest to the audience that read our website. So that's why we report on it, because people want to know about it.
And I think too, the time zone difference probably works in the favor of people who are on their phone, want to read a quick summary of what's going on. They're not up at 2 a.m. to watch a NASCAR race that
Yeah.
I'm up for at 2 a.m.
I was going to say you are.
I'll take that bullet for Australia. That's fine. It's
Good
okay.
man.
But
Good man.
I think that's sort of because Australia's sort of on the fringes of it. It's not, embedded in all our news cycles here. People will come to the dedicated motorsport sites to find out about SVG because, frankly, he's also doing well. I mean, I think if he was doing rubbish, no one would care. But the
Not as
fact
much.
that
No.
the fact that he is over there kicking some serious goals and, he's in line to qualify for the chase, touch wood, 16th in the points as we go to press at the moment.
That's a lot of wood to
And just
touch there.
just holding on. He's got a 50-point margin over the buffer, which he, in theory, should be able to hold on to. So he's doing things that his much more fancy teammates aren't doing in that Trackhouse car. So I think that certainly plays into it as well.
And probably the other thing to just mention quickly is that this has been going on forever and a day. Media, motorsport media, it's kind of not everyone gets a turn. It's like television coverage. It's like all those things. There are plenty of good stories out there and plenty of other people doing other things, but you just can't cover them all. And there's only so many hours in the day to be able to do all that. So we kind of have to put our resource where the interest is from the audience. And overwhelmingly, what Shane's doing in the US is absolutely ticking that box. So that's why we regularly report on what he's doing. And don't forget, they race so often. What did you say? 36
Well,
rounds
more than
in
that.
Cup,
There's
and plus if he does some trucks and the odd O'Reilly and the odd other thing and the odd other livery, and there's just so much of it to report on to begin with, let alone actually doing it.
Well, it's 36 points paying weekends, 2 other non-championship weekends a year. So the news cycle's just constant for 10 months of the year, every single week. We had an off week the other week. I didn't know what to do with myself.
I was going to say, it was very strange. It felt very weird that there wasn't some form of a story or an update, because there was nothing to update, because for once they weren't racing.
Wake up at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. What's happening? Nothing.
Back to bed.
That was great from all the NASCAR teams with their social media that week. They just posted their blank templates. This week, coming up, nothing at nowhere. Tune in, don't.
Yeah, real rarity for those guys and girls to have a weekend off. It's an amazingly punishing schedule. I mean, it's very impressive how they do it, and obviously those who are right up the top of the pecking order they got some comforts and some creature comforts to help with it all, but it's a big effort. It's a really big schedule in a year, but yeah, it gives content because, as you said, the cycle just keeps on rolling. And that's before anything big ticket, controversial, unique, amazing happens within all of that. So there's already a lot to play with before you even get to some big ticket type of news unfolding or things on track or whatever it might be. So that is, in a nutshell, why and how. So that is what we kind of do on these Q&As. I think that's all the Qs. You got any more, or am I out of the list here?
I'm all out of questions unless we've had a PDF problem here, but well done.
I think we finished it at 2. Hey, look, keep these questions coming. We can't get to everyone that everyone sends through every time. We will do our best, as we always do, to try to get to as many. And we like to be able to give decent, informed and balanced answers where we can. And sometimes we have to do a bit of research to get the answers as well. So it can take a little bit of time. We've got plenty more coming up on the V8 Sleuth podcast very, very soon. A few more chats, some more Q&A, some more undercut as well. If you haven't caught up with the Mark Scaife, Steve Richards and Tim Lay chats, I would encourage you to do that. There's some great podcast listening here on the V8 Sleuth podcast. This year, it's all for Parramatta Toyota, Sydney's Toyota dealer, with a passion for performance and motorsport. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.